This next round of conference realignment could set off shockwaves throughout college sports. Will it be led by the SEC? Will they actually take 4 teams instead of 2 from the ACC? And if that happens, what would it mean for Notre Dame? And what would it mean for the league my favorite team plays in, the Big 12? We're going to talk about all that in this episode of Couz's Corner, and we're going to do that right after this word from one of my channel sponsors. Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com. What is up, and welcome into this episode of Couz's Corner. You have found yourself at the home for top shelf college sports news and analysis around the West Virginia Mountaineers, the Big 12, and sometimes a little conference realignment, and that's what we're focusing on today. On tap, we're going to discuss the next possible round of conference realignment, and that's right, I'm having my shades on. In memory of the late, great Golden Blue Dude, we are going to enter, a little bit at least, into the speculation zone in this episode. Everything we're talking about today is speculation until it either happens or it does not happen. But I think some of it is going to happen. I've got a source that has shared some information with me. We're also going to reference some things Mr. Greg Pflugar has talked about over on his show. Let's go ahead and get started. The SEC could be kicking off the next round of conference realignment, and it would be huge. According to Greg Pflugar over on his show, they could actually take 4 teams from the ACC instead of 2. Most people thought they would take 2, that they would take North Carolina, Virginia, maybe Clemson and Florida State, whatever. According to Greg and the sources he has, according to his show that he's actually done a couple shows on this already, the SEC could actually take North Carolina, Virginia, and Clemson and Florida State. That's right. They could take 4 teams from the ACC, which would basically obliterate that conference as we know it, at least as a power league today. That would be horrible for the ACC. Would be great for the SEC. Would be great for Clemson, Florida State fans. Would be great for UNC and UVA fans. Not so much for the rest of the ACC. And according to Greg's sources, that is because the Big Ten plans to take Miami. And the SEC does not want the Big Ten to get a complete foothold on the state of Florida. So therefore, they would go ahead and take Florida State and Clemson to prevent that from happening. They do not want the Big Ten to get both Florida State and Miami. So they would take Florida State to prevent that from happening. It would also keep those schools under the SEC umbrella versus them moving to a Fox property like the Big Ten, a Fox, NBC, CBS property like the Big Ten. But if this happens, if this move happens, it would send absolute waves throughout college athletics, man. It would affect every Power 4 conference, heck, even the G5s for that matter. It would be huge. It would be bigger than Texas and Oklahoma going to Florida, going to the SEC. It would be bigger than the 2 LA schools going to the Big Ten. It would be bigger, or at least as big as the Pac collapsing. Losing an entire conference is pretty big. I'm not sure it would be bigger than that. But it could be. Depends on how it would depend on the ramifications of it, right? What would be the final dominoes to fall? We could see the collapse of other conferences, maybe more than one. But if that happens, it would be massive. You would have, in this scenario, you'd have UNC, UVA, Clemson, Florida State going to the SEC. You would have Miami going to the Big Ten. Well, a lot of you are going to say, but Couz, what happens? Who goes with Miami to the Big Ten? They would have to take somebody with them, right? Realignment typically happens at least in 2s. According to Greg and his sources, it would be Notre Dame. Because in this scenario, the ACC would essentially be falling apart at the seams. And Notre Dame and their TV partners would not be happy with the new ACC. They would be losing all the top brands that they would be playing games against. Remember the unequal revenue sharing agreement that the ACC just agreed to with Clemson and Florida State. As part of that agreement, Notre Dame gets to play more games against Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. That keeps, not only did it satisfy those three schools, it also satisfied Notre Dame and NBC, their TV partner. Because remember, NBC owns the television rights to Notre Dame and all Notre Dame home games. Because Notre Dame is an independent in football. You think NBC is going to be happy with Notre Dame playing all their games against Syracuse, Boston College, Pitt, whatever G5 teams the ACC may backfill with? Stanford? Yeah, Stanford's not a bad one, but you get my point. The quality of the schedule would take a huge nosedive. And I'm not trying to throw shade at those schools. Those schools are pretty equal, or at least close to equal to most, if not all, the Big 12. So I'm not sitting here trying to think that those schools are not worth anything. It's just the fact. The ACC would be losing their top brands and the schools that bring the most TV viewership. Notre Dame would not. Those are the teams Notre Dame want to play more frequently. And that is what's keeping the Notre Dame tied to the ACC as far as their agreement to play more ACC teams. That would all fall apart if those teams leave, or most of those teams leave and go to the SEC. It would finally potentially force Notre Dame into a conference. And it's been pretty well known for a long time that if Notre Dame has to leave to another conference, it's going to be, or a conference rather, for football, it would be the Big Ten. It's not a secret. I think most people understand that and the reasons why. We're not going to get into that. Now, Greg did talk about some potential political hurdles that the SEC would have to get over in order to add those four schools I mentioned: UNC, UVA, Clemson, Florida State. Primarily Clemson, Florida State, because UNC, they are tied at the hip with NC State because they have the same Board of Regents. And a huge chunk, a large percentage of the members of that Board of Regents are NC State grads. Do you think they're going to just let UNC leave NC State in the dust for nothing without a fight? Not happening. We all know what happened. We all know the politics around the state of Virginia, UVA and Virginia Tech. Now, they don't have the same Board of Regents necessarily, but there are politicians in the state of Virginia that would not allow that to happen without a fight. Most notably, their Attorney General. Attorney General Miyares. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Jason Miyares, and I assume he's still the Attorney General. He was earlier this year, a year ago, when an article came out in Cardinal News where Miyares actually reached out to this reporter to talk to him about realignment and what he thought about it. Now, he made a point to reach out to this reporter. Do you think Miyares may have known there were talks going on behind the scenes? He basically laid out a warning to UVA and Virginia Tech that the other one does not need to make decisions in a vacuum without considering the ramifications to the other institution, which, oh, by the way, impacts the state of Virginia as a whole. And he said it's his, and I'm paraphrasing this. I'll leave a link to the article in the description box. His job is to protect the citizens of the state and the public institutions of the state. That includes both Virginia Tech and UVA. You have to look back no further than 2003 when the ACC was taking teams from the Big East. Virginia Tech was not initially going to be part of that list. The Attorney General of the state of Virginia, backed by the governor at the time, filed a lawsuit, along with some other schools in the Big East, filed a lawsuit against the ACC. During that lawsuit, UVA locked arms with Virginia Tech and were able to get them in to the ACC. So they did not get left behind. Now, unfortunately, other schools did, like West Virginia, UConn. Hey, do me a favor. Go check out my good friends over at Appalachia Digital. If you need a brand new website for your small business, or if you're just looking to get found easier on Google, go check out appalachiadigital.com/Couz. These are the fine folks who designed my brand new website over at wvsportschat.com. They did a fantastic job. I love their work. I think you will too. So go check them out. appalachiadigital.com/Couz. Let them know Couz sent you. I also want to thank them for supporting my work here at Couz's Corner and at Hoops from the Hills. Now let's get back to the show. They all got left behind. But Virginia Tech did not, because they had the help of UVA and the political pressure from the governor, the attorney general, and others. The attorney general and the governor of Virginia is not going to allow that to happen without a fight. He's not going to let UVA leave VT in the dust. The source I have, who's feeding me information, which he's admitted may or may not come to pass, but he does have sources that are pretty close to this situation. But he's telling me that the SEC wants in North Carolina and Virginia bad enough that they might be willing to take North Carolina State and Virginia Tech along with them just to get UNC and UVA. Not only would you have a Wolfpack backpack being carried along by UNC, you would have a Virginia backpack in this case, and I know that doesn't rhyme. Doesn't sound as cool, does it? And by the way, shout out to the guys over at College Football Mafia Network for coining the phrase Wolfpack backpack. But nonetheless, Virginia Tech could tag along with UVA to the SEC potentially. If that happens, there's a chance that the SEC doesn't want to go past 20 schools. My source, the same source, has also told me networks aren't crazy about getting more than 20 schools in a conference. So if the SEC decides to stop at 20, what happens to Clemson and Florida State in that situation? Do they end up in the Big Ten? According to Greg's sources, SEC doesn't want that to happen. So that's why they might take and might be willing to fight through those political hurdles to get Clemson and Florida State instead of UNC and VT. But anyway, we'll see how that plays out, if it plays out. But there is a chance now, according to my source, there is still a chance for the Big 12 to grab Clemson and Florida State. Now, I think it's a long shot, and I don't think it's going to happen. But there are scenarios where it could happen. Personally, my personal opinion is if they're not able to get into the P2, I actually think they might be able to keep the ACC together. An ACC, even without UNC, UVA, NC State, and Virginia Tech, and Miami even, if they still have Clemson and Florida State, the two top brands in the league, I think they'd survive. Now, they might have to take a pay cut from ESPN, but I think they'd survive. They could backfill with a few G5 schools, and I think they could survive. Maybe. But that same source has also told me that he thinks Louisville is going to end up in the Big 12 at some point. Louisville is extremely unhappy, regardless of what happens with everything else, that Louisville will probably end up in the Big 12. Louisville is not happy with what's going on in the ACC. They are not happy with having to give more of their revenue to Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and whoever else. They don't like the unequal revenue sharing model. They don't like the fact that they might potentially get left behind when they are arguably the fourth highest, most valuable brand in that conference, outside of obviously Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. Louisville feels like they're number 4, and they're not getting respected. They're not getting treated like it. They feel like they're on the outside looking in to a degree. The Big 12 would likely welcome them with open arms, and they would be a great fit for the Big 12, in my opinion. They already have a couple natural rivals with West Virginia and Cincinnati. They fit geographically. I think they'd be a good fit for the Big 12. Come on over, Louisville, while the water's warm. But here's the thing. If this shakes out, and I know it sounds on the surface like this might be a good thing for the Big 12, because, hey, the Big 12 could go grab Louisville. They could go grab maybe a Pitt. Maybe they grab, if NC State and Virginia Tech don't get into the P2, maybe they grab them. There are a lot of scenarios here that sounds good for the Big 12, but here's my fear. And here's what I think. This is my prognostication. This is my speculation zone moment here. I think if this happens, if the P2 is able to grab Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, Virginia, and Miami and Notre Dame, even if the Big 12 is able to absorb the next biggest brands in the ACC, why would the P2 in that situation, why would the P2 in their mind, why would they even need to be affiliated with the Big 12 anymore? They would already have the 40 biggest, not the 40 biggest brands. They would already have 40-team conference, 20-team leagues, 40 total teams. They would have enough to do their own playoff. They would have all the top brands in those two conferences. They're already talking about a scheduling agreement for regular season and bowl games, the only way they would even be affiliated anymore with the other two leagues or any leagues would be the college football playoff, and that deal expires in 2031. So after 2031, why they could just wipe their hands clean of everybody else, take their ball, go home, do their own thing, have their own playoff, play each other in the non-conference. Why? And I think that's where we're heading, folks. Us Big 12 fans, we can jump up and down and celebrate the fact that the Big 12 might get ACC schools. But I'm not so sure it'd be a good thing for the ACC to fall apart. I'm not sure that would actually be good for the Big 12 because I just don't know. No offense to the brands in the Big 12. The team I root for is one of them, for crying out loud. So I'm not trying to throw shade. I love this conference, but I'm really worried that it will not be the same once this happens because they would lose their seat at the power conference table because the P2 will decide they don't need them anymore. If you have Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Clemson, UNC, Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA, Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU, go down the list. If you have all those schools, why do you need West Virginia, Louisville, Cincinnati, Kansas State, Boston College, Syracuse? Why do you need those schools? You probably don't. In their mind, they probably don't. And I'm really concerned that that's the road we're headed down. And that's after 2031, that's where we may end up. That's my fear. I think they're okay through 2031 because that's when the next college football playoff contract is going to expire. But after that, it's going to be Katie bar the door, no holds barred, whatever you want to call it. And I think the P2 may go do their own thing. And then it's going to be up to the tier 2 schools, the ACC Big 12 leftovers, to either do their own thing, maybe call up a few of the G5 schools to join them, or just become G5 conferences in their own right. And that's kind of scary to think about. As a school who's been in the P2, fan of a school who's been in the P2, and I'm, again, not trying to be disrespectful to the G5, but nobody wants to be downgraded or relegated in this case. Nobody wants that. But I think we're going to a 3-tier system of P2, the tier 2 of the power leagues with the ACC and the Big 12, which would include a few more G5s, and then we'll have the rest of the G5s. That's what I think we're heading to. The heck, the Pac-12, the newly formed Pac-12 may end up being part of that tier 2 as well with the ACC and Big 12. But I think that's where we're heading. We're going to have 3 tiers of FBS football instead of 2. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Let me know below. Hopefully the shades weren't too distracting. I know there's a huge reflection here. But nonetheless, had to pay homage to Golden Blue Dude. Rest in peace, brother. Please leave a comment below. I want to give a quick shout out to my VIP channel members of this episode. The random shout outs go to David Cummings, Brad Cheney, Jeremy Croy, Appalachia Africa Twin, and Vernon Sheldon Witter. Thank you all for being VIP members. If you want to be a VIP member and you're not on this list now, hit the join button below or go to my channel homepage and hit the join button there. It'll explain the perks that go along with it, and there are 2 levels to choose from. You can support me for free by hitting the thumbs up button, leaving a comment, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell so you'll be notified of future videos. You can also share it with your family and friends who like Big 12 sports, West Virginia sports, and conference realignment talk. Want to give another shout out to my sponsors, Cats, Kenner, Stone Street, and Buckner, and Appalachia Digital. Hope the rest of your day's top shelf. God bless. Q Country Roads.